Hello again, I'm Anthony Cusimano, and this here is a good sir named Alex Restrepo.
Still.
So what are we talking about today?
We're going to talk about basically storage units and storage lifecycle policies. So in another video, we talked a little bit about policies in general.
Yeah.
And so we're going to take a look at one of the key subcomponents of policies, which are storage, the storage units that they target, and importantly, automatic storage lifecycle management, which is really easy to set up, which is actually something that's really cool to show as a result of that.
Everything's seemed pretty easy so far, so I'm excited for us to dive in.
Yeah, sure. So real quick, let's go back into the policies themselves, and I just want to take a look at one of these policies. Let's look at, as an example, this VMware policy. And so we looked at some of the other drop-downs before. Right now, I'm just going to drop down the policy storage, and you're going to see that I have some options. I could use the cloud storage we have set up in this environment. I could use the regular deduplication media server that we have in this environment. And there are some lifecycle policies already in here. We're going to create a new one in a moment, and we're going to see how easy it is to then select it. And importantly, by simply selecting it, we're going to show the behavior that gets automated as a result.
Now for the kids watching at home, you did say the D word. Would you mind going over what that is?
Deduplication?
Yes.
Sure. So deduplication is single instance storage of data. So if you have a unique block coming into some sort of storage that it's not already on the storage, it's going to write the block. But if the same block comes in, the example I always used to give is if you're using backing up a bunch of Windows servers, what do they all have in common?
They all have that Windows directory.
At a minimum.
System 32.
Right. And so there's going to be some blocks in common. And so what happens is the storage is smart enough to say, I already have this exact same block. Instead of writing it again, I'm just going to create a pointer, a hash, they call it, a number, assign it a value, and point it to the original block. And now, in terms of the storage itself, all you're keeping are the whole block, the unique blocks, and everything else just is pointers. And then when you go to do a restore, it just kind of puts all the necessary blocks, including reduplicating them, so rehydrating them, into a full image. But what you actually store is much less, maybe about 1/10 of what you normally would store.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So that's policy storage in there. So let's actually go into the storage units themselves. And so if we go here, you can see that we have 2 storage units right now. Right? And there are numbers of ways to create storage units. One of the easiest ways is to go back into the wizards. Again, you can create cloud storage. We talked about that before. You can create disk storage servers and importantly, disk pools, right? And disk volumes, right? So that's how you're able to create some of the deduplication storage we saw earlier. And so you can see here in terms of being able to create various types of storage mediums. Once they're created, they would show up as storage units here in the dropdown. Right? So once we have some storage units, we can then manipulate subsets of storage units into a storage lifecycle policy. So the idea here is when you do backups, you're doing them for 2 reasons. Do you know what those are?
Protection and recovery?
Sort of. I mean, definitely recovery is part kind of an underlying theme for all of them.
Sure.
But the main reason you're taking backups first is as a stopgap, right? So near-term rapid restores. And then the other one is a little bit more of compliance.
Yeah, definitely.
Whether it's financials or medical or whatever, or government, you're going to have some requirement that you keep data for X amount of time.
Right.
Right. And so long-term retention of backups is something that's a reality for really any enterprise and even into the small businesses. And so with storage lifecycle policies, we're able to automatically manage the lifecycle of that data so that you don't have to. You don't have to constantly monitor the data. Oh, has it reached this time period? Okay, I need to go in and manually duplicate it. No. That's archaic. We, of course, take care of that automatically for you. And so I'll show you how easy it is to set up one of these storage lifecycle policies. If we go into lifecycle policies over here, there we go. All right, and so what we do here is we go ahead and give it a name, of course. And so just so that we're visual here, we'll call this one Viva Vegas for no reason at all.
No reason.
And so the first operation we're going to do is we're going to do a regular backup. And that's that near term I talked about earlier in terms of rapid restore. And so we'll go ahead and target the MSTP storage that we have available. And we'll keep it there for, we could say 4 weeks, we could say a month.
Okay.
Right? And so we'll hit OK. And that's the first behavior that's going to happen if you select the storage lifecycle policy.
Okay.
That's okay, but you could do that from just a regular policy.
Right.
The magic comes in when we start adding operations. And so when we add an operation, first of all, it defaults to duplication. There is a replication option. Replication from a NetBackup perspective means I'm going to take backup images and send them somewhere else.
Okay.
Not just somewhere else physically, but somewhere else logically, meaning from one NetBackup domain to another. So that even if my entire NetBackup domain fails, I'm still protected. My data is still somewhere and I can recover very easily.
Does that mean that we could also recover at that secondary location?
You can recover to anywhere from anywhere as long as you have credentials and network.
That's handy.
Absolutely. in this instance, we're just going to do a regular duplication.
Okay.
And this time we are going to target the Cloud Catalyst AWS pool.
Okay.
And so what we're doing here is we're going to send deduplicated data, and we could target, as an example, AWS Glacier, right, for real affordable long-term retention. And so after a month, we're going to go ahead and send it there, and we're going to send it there for 6 months. Let's say that's our retention period. And we're going to wait to create this duplicate until the first image is ready to expire. We're telling the behavior here that after a month of that image living locally, we're going to go ahead and send it to the cloud. Now, if we didn't check that box, what would happen is we would keep it on locally for a month, and we would send it to the cloud for 6 months at the same exact time.
So if we wanted to, we could kind of optimize our data movement on when we send things where.
That's exactly right. Yeah, you kind of can control that. And then we'll hit OK. And you can see here that we now have an indented second step of duplication. We'll hit OK. And if we go back into our policy, go back into VMware, and go to storage, we're going to see Viva Vegas. If we hit OK, what's going to happen is it's actually going to take on the components of the Viva Vegas SLP. And so it's going to write a backup locally for a month, write a duplicate of that backup to the cloud when that local backup is expiring, and keep it there for 6 months. And that's automated behavior that can now be applied to hundreds of VMs at the same time, in this instance VMs. It could also be Oracle backups, SQL backups, Exchange, file server backups. Anything NetBackup does can be regulated by these SLPs.
So it's almost like a one-to-many and a many-to-many all at once.
It can cover all of that.
Yeah.
And more importantly, it's just about the automation.
Yeah.
Right? And so that this is no longer a headache. We take care of it for you, and you're meeting compliance. You're meeting all of those regulatory requirements that you may have in your environment.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that's storage lifecycle policies and storage units.